All right, I guess we're live here. Hopefully everything's. I'm just setting up here. I'll switch over to live. Take a look at the webinar. There we are. All right, looks like it's live. Hi everyone, I'm Perry. Just getting set up here. We'll get started in 15 minutes. But if you have a question right now, feel free to post it below the video here. Or, if you want to just tell me where you're from, that'd be good to know too. Looks like my screen's a little low. I'm going to get something to raise it up. It's always very complicated, this system here. See how that looks. Oh. All right. I think that looks all right. See. Thanks for joining. Yeah, feel free to post below. I'll get started at the top of the hour. Right now it is 12 minutes away. So according to my clock, yes, 12 minutes. But thank you for joining, and feel free to start posting your questions. Let me know where you're from too, and let me know if you can see all right. You never know about this technology. I need to get an improved computer. This computer's a little slow, but I'm going to get one for the next webinar, but I didn't get it in time for this one. But I got some good stuff on this webinar, and I've had some good questions. So if you have questions right now, feel free to post them, and maybe I can start answering a few. All right, I've actually got a few questions already. What, in your experience, is the most challenging aspects of natural cosmetic formulating? Great question. I actually covered that in the webinar, but I'll give you a little hint. Uh, Preservation is the toughest. Well, preservation is tough. Sticking to natural is tough, but the most challenging aspect is creating formulas that actually work as well as consumers expect. When you are formulating natural, you really are limiting yourself to what you can use. Now, consumers have been using cosmetic products for years and so they've grown to expect a certain level of performance. Now, when you've all of a sudden say, well, you can't use all of those great ingredients that were always so valuable, now you have to not use those and try to get the same performance. You just can't do it. There's just really no uh, natural version of a silicone like dimethicone that gives you that slip, that gives you that shine. There are things that can mimic it, but you're only trying to duplicate something. So that's really getting performance is the most difficult thing. And that question was from Buzzing Sound or Handra. Thanks, you, Handra. I'm Perry Romanowski. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to get started in 10 minutes. But if before then you have a question, feel free to post that question below. Put in your email, and if I don't get to the question during the webinar, I'll make it a point to try to answer via email. Now, sometimes I don't get to all the questions, but I'll get to as many as I can. This webinar is slated to go for an hour, and then I'll stick around and answer questions for as long as we have questions. This is the early phases. I'm always setting things up to make sure it looks there. I see me. Just want to make sure everything's working here. And I like to close everything down here. Okay, we've got a few questions. Got a big turnout for this webinar, over 1,800 people on this webinar. So thank you. Thank you all for coming. And for, for you who are watching a recording of this, sorry we didn't get the timing right for you, but that's why we record it. All right, if you have a question, feel free to post that question now. I'll go through an answer. Here's a question from Wendy. Are face oils, properly blended with antioxidants and other active ingredients, just as effective as face lotions and creams? Are they more effective, less effective? There's so much info out there, and some say more effective, others say less. Well, it's a good question. You see, creams and lotions are made up of oils. They have antioxidants and the such. So the only thing that a cream does that's different from a direct oil is it aesthetically it feels better on the skin. So it's kind of a diluted version of what you're getting. So um, the direct oil. It can be more effective. On the other hand, it might not feel as well, and you might be putting too much on. And so, on some level, the cream and the lotions give you much more control than the direct oil. But the direct oil is actually the thing that's providing much of the benefits. So it's tough to say. You can make them formulating effectively, but just as you can with creams and lotions. So it's difficult to say more effective, less effective. It really depends on what's your measure of that. So there you go. Thanks for that question, Wendy. If you have a question, feel free to post that question. We'll get started on this webinar in 7 minutes. I'm just setting up here. Looks like my thing worked there. There you go. Hello, Kim. Kim from Maine. Welcome. Yeah, if you are new here, feel free to post here. And so you let me know your name and where you're from. So we've got over 1,800 people signed up. So we've got people from around the world. But I love to hear from where people are. So far, Maine is the farthest we've got there. All right, I got my tea. When I was setting up, I broke a light bulb down there, so I hope I don't step on the glass. Maybe I should sweep that up. So I got 5 minutes. If you have a question, feel free to post that question. Or if you're just on the webinar, feel free to post below and let me know where you're from. Just can't believe I broke this glass. The life of a cosmetic chemist is never done. Never dull. There we go. All right. All right, welcome. We've got Wendy from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Welcome. Sasha from South Africa. Hello. Roombi from the UK, it's great to see you. Tracy, or I'm sorry, Tina from Tracy, California. So we've got people all over. Welcome. It's great to hear from you. Great that you joined here. Uh, Another person from South Africa. We're big in South Africa. I hope this timing works out. I really appreciate you coming on. And hopefully you find this very useful. We'll get started in 4 minutes. Lydia is in Toronto. Hello. I think you're on the same time zone as me. And I'm here in Chicago. Paula, all the way from Portugal. Hello, Portugal. I really want to visit Portugal someday. I've not been there, but I hear lovely things about it. And Tony from Arkansas. Hello, Tony. Janelli from New York. Hello, Janelli. Thanks for coming by the webinar. We got Barbara from Venezuela. Okay, we've got 4 continents covered already. So let's see. We need Asia and Australia. There we go. Carol from Guatemala. Hello, Carol. Welcome. All right. Yeah, just keep posting those questions. I'm going to answer the questions at the end of the webinar. But you can post questions just along the whole way. I drink a lot of tea. It's no coffee for me, just tea. I'm too young for coffee. But all right. But it's nice and natural. It's in the theme here, right? What's more natural than tea? It comes right from plants. All right. Barbara from Venezuela. Yeah, okay. Christina from Montreal. Hello, Christina. And Peggy from Venezuela. Ursula from Poland. Hello, Poland. You know, my father is actually from Poland. He came over right after the war. So that's where the name Romanowski. In fact, when I was a kid, I went to Polish school, tried to learn the language, and I think I know about 100 words. Unfortunately, about 50 of those words are numbers. So. Nina from Slovenia. Hello. So we've got people from all over the planet right now. Go ahead and keep posting. We're going to start in 1 minute. It looks like everything's working. There we go. Now I see what I look like. This is what I look like. Sometimes the audio is off with my voice. That's just because of the way the internet works and this works. So sorry, most of this webinar is going to be a presentation with the slide. So you'll see the slide. You won't see me too much, but a little bit, but not that much. So I am going to get started in under 1 minute. Welcome. Let's see how many people we have on board. All right, we have nearly 200 people already here. This is great. Yeah, keep on coming. If you have a question right now, feel free to post that question. And look at that, it's right at 11 o'clock. So we're going to get started. All right, let's get started here. Hello, I'm Perry Romanowski, and this is the natural formulating guide from a cosmetic chemist's point of view. In the next hour, I'm going to go through all my thoughts on natural formulating. So as we do that, let me first set up and get you the slides ready. All right, here we are. All right, we're gonna get started. Thanks so much for joining me on this new webinar today. Today's talk will be about a growing trend in the cosmetic industry and how it will impact cosmetic formulators. I call this a cosmetic chemist's guide to formulating natural cosmetics. Now, the natural formulating trend has really caught on, and this has created a new challenge for science-minded cosmetic formulators. I'll cover many of these new challenges, and we'll also be answering questions at the end of the presentation. Now, some of you have already sent in questions, and I will answer those. But if you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them in the box and below the video, and I'll answer them all that I can at the end of the talk. Here we go. I just had to figure out how to move the slides. All right, a couple of other things before we get started on the main presentation. I wanted to make sure you get the free gift for joining the webinar. Now, I put together this handbook of practical formulating tips that you should find useful in formulating. It's just a collection of articles that can help make you a better, more effective cosmetic formulator. There's useful information about formulating, product evaluation, equipment, and even a resource section. It's over 100 pages of pure content, and it's yours free just for joining today. And to get the gift, just click on the link below the video on the webpage. Be sure to do it sometime during this webinar because you're not going to be able to get it after the webinar is over. All right, we're going to cover a lot of information in this webinar. I'll try to get through everything in about 45 minutes and then answer questions for another 15 minutes or longer, depending on how many questions there are. The topics we're going to cover include a discussion of what natural cosmetics are and how natural formulating is different from standard formulating. I'll also cover information about some of the natural cosmetic standards and natural ingredients that can be used to replace standard synthetic ingredients. And at the end, I'll give you a special offer related to the practical cosmetic formulating and natural courses. Now, after this talk, here are direct benefits you'll get after going through this webinar. First, you'll have an idea of the different ways natural products are defined in the cosmetic marketplace. Next, you'll see how leading cosmetic companies define natural for their brands. You will know the most common strategies for creating natural cosmetics and also get some ideas on which natural ingredients you can use to replace synthetic ones. Now, many of you might already know a little bit about me, but for the few that don't, I'm Perry Romanowski, and I've been a formulator, educator, and speaker on the topic of cosmetic science for more than 25 years now. Wow. I'm also the current president of the Society of Cosmetic Chemists, and it's my goal to help further develop the SCC online educational efforts and just educate people in the area of formulating. Now, the SCC is the premier place where cosmetic formulators connect and learn about the latest in cosmetic formulating. And if you are at all interested in cosmetic science, the Society of Cosmetic Chemists is a great organization to be part of. Here you'll see I started the Chemist Corner website back in 2008, and it was designed to be a resource for formulators to find training information, career information, and all kinds of advice for becoming a better, more innovative cosmetic chemist. This is currently the focus of my work, more so than daily formulating. Now, one of the most useful parts of the Chemist Corner is the forum. Here, cosmetic chemists around the world talk about formulation issues, swap stories, and get problems solved. It's free to join, and I encourage anyone who has questions about formulating to sign up. We've got a ton of people joining here, and there's some great discussions going on. Before I get started with the main portion of the webinar, I just wanted to mention that you can get a much more detailed look at natural formulating in our course, the Practical Cosmetic Formulating course, the Naturals Edition. This course is designed for people who already have some formulating experience. So if you're an absolute beginner, this might be a little bit too specific for you. But this course will guide you through making natural cosmetic products that can actually be sold on the market. You can get more information by going to the link below. Also, if you stick around at the end, I'm going to have a special offer for people who join the course today. Now, there's one more thing I want to do before we get to the main agenda. Back in 1989 or so, I came up with a 3-word mission statement to guide all of my presentations. So whenever I do a presentation, I try to hit each of these points. My mission is to educate, inspire, and entertain. Now, just to ensure that I get at least one of these accomplished, I'll now switch back to my live view and, well, let's switch here. Oh, there I am. Hello. All right. So now let me just do a little checking. Are the slides okay? Looks like nobody is complaining about slides, so that's good. Good. Like I said, educate, entertain, and inspire. So just to make sure I get one of those, got this hat, this ukulele. Wow. This is a trick I did on TV. See if I can still do it. I did it better on TV, but that's my trick. All right, let's get on with the main presentation. I got to practice that trick some more, huh? All right, let's begin with how I got involved with the natural formulating world. Now, my first introduction to the natural formulating world was in the mid 1990s when I worked on a project for the VO5 line called VO5 Naturals. This product was nearly a direct copy of Herbal Essences, which was doing great at the time, at the market at the time. Now, our brand was a total greenwashing effort since we just took the standard formula, changed the fragrance, the color, the packaging, then we called it VO5 Naturals. We had Fruitation and Vanilla Blossom as names. Now, I'm not sure how well the ugly aqua blue communicated natural, but the launch was successful for us. Those SKUs actually quickly made up about 20% of our sales. We also launched a line called VO5 Herbals, which sold well too. Now, after that, I worked on the Tresemme natural version, which is probably still around, or you can still find it in some form now. This is proof that this type of natural formulating worked, and it actually still works it actually still works now, but maybe just not as well. When I left the lab, I noticed one of the most common requests on my website were questions about natural cosmetic products. Specifically, people wanted to know how to formulate their own chemical-free natural products. So that led to the development of a natural formulating course that I did with Alured. That was the volume 1. And then eventually Alured got out of that business. But there were still a few hundred students who wanted to learn more about naturals. So I created the course of my own, and I'll give you more details of that later. But the bottom line is there is lots of interest in natural formulating. It includes chemists who work for companies who want to learn how to make their current products offering more green, entrepreneurs who want to start their own lines, and even kitchen chemists who want to create products in their own home. In fact, there are over 1,800 people who signed up for this webinar alone. So clearly there is a lot of interest in natural formulating. Before I get into the details of how natural cosmetics are formulated, it makes sense to look at the natural cosmetic market. You can see the impact of green marketing by just walking down the beauty product aisle at the local drugstores or superstores. According to a report by the Klein Group, the natural cosmetic market has reached $30 billion globally in 2013. A company called Future Market Insights just published a report projecting the worldwide natural cosmetic market should reach about $66 billion in 2020. So clearly natural cosmetics represent a significant portion of the cosmetic market. So companies are, launching products to go after it. Now, I should say, just to give you comparison, the cosmetic industry worldwide is about 450 billion. So naturals represents, just about 15% of the market. So it's still relatively small compared to the overall market, but it definitely is growing. The natural personal care market had traditionally been a market that was the realm of small and local brands. Lots of home crafters or brands, they sold at farmers markets, and they would tout their naturalness of their products. They frequently used what I would call fear marketing to convince people that their products were somehow safer than the chemical-laced ones that you might get at the store. This is really the marketing strategy of a small company when they don't have the marketing budget of a big company. But these brands stayed pretty small and were, they're ignored by the large beauty product companies. But until about the 1990s, two natural brands in particular grew large, including Burt's Bees and Tom's of Maine, at least here in the United States. Both of these companies were able to become appealing enough that they were bought by large companies. In 2006, Tom's of Maine was acquired by Colgate Palmolive for $100 million. And then Burt's Bees was bought by Clorox in 2007 for, just over $900 million. Now we'll see which company got the better deal, but clearly uh, this natural trend is something that big companies are investing in. There's a number of other natural brands that were bought by big companies. Now, in order to give you a cosmetic chemist's perspective on natural formulating, it first makes sense to define, what do I mean by natural formulating? Before there was natural formulating, there was just formulating. So now that there's natural formulating, we have to call what we used to do as, let's say, standard formulating or traditional formulating. Now, some of you might imagine that the natural formulator is a friendly, laid-back character, very much into plants and spiritualism and getting back to the roots and connect with nature. And this is in contrast to the standard formulator, who is a mad scientist character who is mixing up potions in a lab and making these synthetic, non-natural abominations which are killing the planet. Of course, neither of these are really accurate. A better way to look at natural versus standard formulating is to consider the motivations and the formulation strategies. For the most part, the main driver for a standard formulator is product performance. Formulators, they want to use whatever ingredients they can to make the products that perform the best. So they can use anything. They can use natural, they can use synthetic. Standard formulators are all focused on what's going to be the best performing product they can make. Now, they also have to balance performance with the best formula aesthetics that they can achieve. And depending on your company, standard formulators also try to provide the best products at the most reasonable cost. You're limited by cost. So performance, aesthetics, and cost are the main drivers of standard cosmetic formulators. Now, on the other hand, natural formulators are much more focused on the ingredients that they use. They certainly want to make products that perform well and provide benefits to consumers, but this is not the primary driver. The ingredients and the source of these ingredients are what is important to the natural formulator. Formula performance, aesthetics, and costs are secondary considerations. Now, they limit themselves to ingredient choices that they see as natural. And some are more insistent on the naturalness of these ingredients than others. This leads to the most important thing that a natural formulator must do before starting any formulation project. You have to define exactly what you mean by natural formulating. What does natural mean? It turns out it's not as easy as it might seem. What is the definition of natural? To answer this question, we have to look at how the term natural is defined. And it turns out that there are many different perspectives on what the word natural means. Now, I just want to inject a bit of reality here. It doesn't matter what you've been told or what I say here or there really are pretty much no natural cosmetics. There's no shampoo tree or lotion bush. You can't plant a seed and then a few months later have a tube of lipstick. Cosmetics they're just not like food. They are all processed in some way. Now, truly natural cosmetics pretty much don't exist. I'm going to explain a little bit later how maybe they do, but the stuff that we're used to, it doesn't exist. Now, there certainly may be some ingredients in nature that have cosmetic benefits, and we're going to talk about them, but even these ingredients have to be processed in some way to make them usable as cosmetics. Now, but although there are actually no natural cosmetics, there are some things that are seen as more natural than others. Ingredients that are obtained from plants or chemically modified from plants or chemically identical to plant ingredients, they're considered by some people as natural. Deciding what is most important when it comes to natural is what you as a formulator will have to do. Now, although the definition of natural is up to you to decide, there are a number of factors you must consider when coming up with your definition. And the most important of those factors for a formulator are what regulators, consumers and retailers have to say about natural. And so, what do governments have to say about natural products, at least natural cosmetics? The term natural has no legal definition. In the US, pretty much anyone can call anything they want natural, at least according to the FDA. In fact, this was taken right from the FDA website when they were asked about natural. They say the FDA does not define the term natural and has not established a regulatory definition for this term in cosmetic labeling. FDA also does not have regulations for the term organic for cosmetics. The US Department of Agriculture regulates the term organic for agricultural products under the National Organic Program. So if your marketing is good enough, you'll be able to find consumers who want the product. Brands that are standard technologies can legally claim that they are natural. And I suppose that since there isn't any proof of something supernatural, they might have a point. But things have changed a little bit recently due to actions by the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission. That's a regulatory body here in the United States. In 2016, they actually filed lawsuits against 5 cosmetic companies for making misleading claims about their natural products. The FTC said that they still don't have a definition of natural. However, if you're going to make the claim 100% natural or all natural, then you can't have synthetic chemicals in your product. They made it clear that marketers who made those specific claims should not use synthetic chemicals. Of course, if this were read in a certain way, then pretty much no product would be able to be considered 100% natural. Nearly all compounds used in cosmetic products are chemically modified in some way. Now, the wording of the claims matters a lot. I would recommend that you avoid claims like all natural and 100% natural until the FTC clarifies what those terms mean. So just avoid it in your marketing. Just so you know, in the US, you don't only risk government action, you also risk being sued by consumers or a lawyer who thinks that your natural product isn't natural enough. The brand that I used to work for, Tresemme, they were sued for their natural product line because it contained synthetic chemicals. Now, they ended up settling the case for $3.2 million and have since stopped selling that naturals line. But this is a real risk for brands trying to claim natural when, they're just using synthetics. You really need a rationale for why your products are natural. Also, if you use the term organic in your product, watch out for the lawyers from California. In that state, they have a rule governing the term organic. So it's a state rule, not a federal rule. And a number of beauty brands have been sued or fined because they use the term organic in their marketing. Brands like Babyganics, Jason, Avalon Organics, and Organics have all had lawsuits brought against them in California. Now, some of them have settled while others have changed their marketing. It's my recommendation that unless you get certified for the term by the USDA, don't use the term organic in your marketing. While the rise of market regulators are important actors to consider when formulating natural, it's also important to understand what your consumers think the term means. There has been a rise in the natural consumer who's looking for products that truly embrace the idea of naturalness. They are so-called LOHAS consumers, which stands for the lifestyle of health and sustainability, and they embrace things like natural cosmetics. Now, big companies like to make products for this consumer segment because they tend to have more money and be better educated. A report by the World Watch Institute suggests that the LOHAS consumer makes up about 30% of the US consumer base, and that number is a little higher in the EU. These are the people who shop at Whole Foods and buy products that they believe are more natural and healthy for them. Now, here are just a few of the things that some natural consumers generally believe. They think natural products are safer. They believe natural products work better. They think chemicals are bad, and they find free from claims compelling. That's sort of free from parabens, free from SLS, that sort of thing. They also try to avoid fragrances and preservatives. And recycling is important to this consumer. And unfortunately, they also will believe many of what I call fear mongers, such as NGOs and beauty bloggers and the media say, whether it's based on reality or not. In fact, as a chemist, you should know what is true and not if you're going to be a formulator in this space. Now, despite what the consumer believes, it's important to know what they believe, but it's important also to know what's true. And you can see that most of these beliefs are not supported by science. Natural cosmetics are not safer. In fact, they are often less safe because of the way the ingredients are processed from nature. Natural cosmetics do not work better. In fact, since you're limiting the ingredients you can use, they usually don't work as well. And avoiding preservatives is not a good thing to do. Microbes are really dangerous to get in your products. And although avoiding some fragrance ingredients is a good practice for people allergic to ingredients, most of the allergen in fragrances actually come from natural ingredients. Now, I would agree that recycling and sustainability are certainly important topics, but you need to realize that you are making products for consumers who have a misunderstanding of science. You'll have to adjust your formulating strategies accordingly. All right, after governments and consumers, the next most important factor to consider when defining natural is what retailers have to say. Companies like Whole Foods, Walmart, Target, and in the UK, Boots, they've all come out with their own definition of what they think qualifies a brand as natural. Now, if you're going to sell into any of these companies, you need to know what they consider natural. In the US, Whole Foods is perhaps the most advanced in this area. They have a program called their Premium Body Care Standards. This is a list of ingredients that are not allowed to be used in any formula that wants to be considered for their premium skincare aisle. The list of prohibited ingredients was made to take into account positive results of the ingredient, the source, the environmental impact, the safety of the ingredient, and unfortunately, this list doesn't always make sense as it wasn't put together by scientists, so sometimes it can be a challenge to formulate to the standard. Whenever you're formulating, it makes sense to see what the competition is doing, and this helps you copy the good things and avoid the bad things. In the natural cosmetics market, companies are taking different approaches to defining natural. For the biggest brands, companies are coming up with their own definitions for natural rather than relying on retailers, consumers, or even natural standards groups. As long as they can get their consumers to believe their approach is natural, then it counts as natural. In case you're wondering, here are some of the top brands in the natural cosmetic space. Now, you can see that many of them are owned by big companies now. They weren't started that way, but they're big companies now. Um, you'll also note that you may consider some of these more natural than others. The market research people who put together such lists consider all of these brands natural. Here are a couple of ways that brands define themselves as natural. Burt's Bees focuses on their ingredients. They say our ingredients, right down to the packaging, are simple, natural, and responsible. Aveda says that they define naturally derived ingredients to be those for which more than 50% of the molecule comes from a plant, non-petroleum, mineral, water, and some other natural source. These definitions, particularly Aveda, have been met with some criticisms because they use things that, other people don't consider natural. But their consumers believe their natural story, so that as far as they're concerned, it is natural. All right, just to give me a little break here and give you a little thinking time. When I was putting together this presentation, I came across a lot of natural brands. Some of them had pretty crazy names. Here's a list of natural brands that I came across. Now, 3 of them are real and 1 of them is faked. Now, see if you can take a moment and figure out which is the fake brand. Is it Dr. Forest, Chicken Poop, Anti-Monkey Butt, or Rainbow Research? I'll give you a moment to think about that while I take a drink. All right, it turns out that the one that I just made up was Dr. Forest. Yeah, the other 3 brands are real natural beauty brands that you can go to Amazon and buy. Now, it just goes to show you that clearly, nearly any name for a brand name can actually work for a cosmetic. So don't get too hung up if you're coming out with a brand name about what the name is. The bottom line when coming about a definition of natural, though, is that it's up to you to decide what the definition of natural you want to follow. Coming up with this definition is crucial in deciding what formulation strategy you're going to follow. It's going to set the ingredients that you can use and the performance targets that you can expect to achieve. So this brings us to the next part of the webinar, natural product formulation strategies. Now, I can't go into details of every type of formulation, but what I can do is outline some formulation strategies that might be based on, whatever definition of natural that you're following. Now, just since sometimes these webinar technologies go a little crazy, let me just check and make sure everyone can see everything. All right, it looks like the presentation is still working. Yay. So I'm back to that. Okay. Natural formulating strategies. As a formulator, I see 4 levels of formulating that can be used to make cosmetic formulas. Now, the level of which you achieve is going to depend on what you mean by the word natural. These levels include tier 1, which is true nature. This means you're just taking something from nature, maybe purifying it, putting it in a packaging, calling it cosmetic. Then there's the organic standard. These are the most difficult standards to follow, and you're limited to almost no synthetic processes in your formulas. Then there's tier 3, which is the certification level. This is the level at which you follow some natural standard, either by your own company or by some certifying body. Some synthetic chemicals are considered okay. And then tier 4 is greenwashing. And this is the level in which you just take a standard formula, add some natural ingredients, and call it natural. Let's look at these a little bit more in detail. This is the direct from nature formulating strategy. Now, this type of formulating is what many people who make natural cosmetics dream of following. These types of products would be the most like food. You go out into nature, you find some blend of ingredients squeezed out of a plant, put it in a container, and you call it a cosmetic. You strive for minimal processing and no synthetic chemical reactions. If there actually were a cosmetic plant, this is the level of formulating you'd follow. Now, there are some ingredients that are taken directly from nature that can work as cosmetics. Things like coconut oil, lanolin, beeswax, honey. They can all be packaged up and sold for their cosmetic benefits. The benefits that you can get from this type of formulating, though, are severely limited. So this is why you don't find many companies following this tier 1 strategy. But if you can create, functional products and find an audience, there isn't a lot of competition at this tier 1 level. That takes us to the next level, the tier 2 level of natural formulating. And this is the one in which you follow the USDA National Organic Program, or the NOP rules. These are the most strict rules, and very few cosmetic products would actually qualify. The National Organic Program is the federal regulatory framework governing organic food here in the United States. It was made law in October of 2002, and it's administered by the USDA. The Organic Food Production Act of 1990 required the USDA to develop national standards for organic products, but these are focused, remember, on food. So the NOP standard covers in detail all aspects of food production, processing, delivery, and retail sales. Some cosmetic makers got the idea that they might be able to qualify for the USDA organic standard. So if a personal care product contains or is made up of agricultural ingredients, and then they can also meet the USDA NOP organic production, handling, processing, and labeling standards, then it might be eligible for certification under that NOP regulations. Further, the operations which produce the organic agricultural ingredients, the handlers of these ingredients, and the manufacturer of the final product, they all have to be certified by the USDA accredited organization. Now, since you can't have any synthetic ingredients to qualify for the USDA organic standards, very few cosmetics are actually certified under this program. However, you can make some. You just can't make a lot of products that work really well. The next level of formulating is what I call natural certification. For companies that follow this strategy, they pick a formulation standard, or maybe they create their own, and they make products in accordance with those standards. These standards are a bit looser than the USDA standards in that they allow some synthetic chemical processing. This allows manufacturers to make products that perform more closely to the cosmetic products that people are used to. Here's a list of some of the more important natural standards groups in the United States. These aren't all the groups, but they are the ones that have gotten a lot of traction. They include the NSF International, which has their Made with Organic Personal Care standards. There's the Natural Products Association, who has their own specific standards for naturalness. And then the Environmental Working Group, the EWG Verified Program. They're best known for their in the personal care industry for their Skin Deep database. Many of you might know about that. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of that, and we do cover those details in our course, but you can go to these organizations and find out exactly how to get your formulas certified by them. Now, all of the standards mentioned thus far differ from each other in details and in level of acceptance, but these are just the US standards. There are a number of standards established around the world, such as at the EcoCert in France, the Soil Association in the UK, Bioforum in Belgium, Natru. Now, most of these groups got together and they created a single standard called Cosmos. And we'll focus a little bit on Cosmos standards in an attempt to harmonize the EU standards. They created Cosmos, and they're driven by the following rules: promoting the use of products from organic agricultural and respecting biodiversity, using natural resources responsibly, respecting the environment, using processing and manufacturing that clean and respectful of human health and the environment, following the precautionary principle, which is just says, avoid any ingredient that seems questionable until it's proven safe. And then they integrate the principles of green chemistry. When I was at the In Cosmetics program a couple of years ago, it seemed like most of the raw material suppliers were touting the fact that they were EcoCert approved. All right, we've talked about the different groups. Let's talk about the different standards. As I suggested, each standards are a bit different, but there are some things that are in common, but the details are a little different. Here, let's take a look at some of the common things. It's generally understood that a natural ingredient is one that is not derived synthetically or synthetically processed. Essentially, it means that a natural ingredient should be something that is found in nature and has minimal processing done to it. This is the standard of which the NOP program works. If it doesn't come from a plant, except minerals and waters don't count, it isn't natural. This is why it's so difficult to create cosmetics that it fits within the NOP program, because you need things like surfactants and emulsifiers and things. Other standards allow for some chemistry. I mean, there isn't a shampoo bush out there, so you need surfactants. In fact, there are very few surfactants in nature that would compare in cleansing ability to synthetic surfactants. The exact prohibited ingredients vary from standard to standard, but here's a list of pretty much commonly avoided by all of them: parabens, formaldehyde donors like DMDM hydantoin, petrolata, mineral, paraffin, anything petroleum-derived ingredients, glycols, at least the petroleum-derived ones like propylene glycol, chemical sunscreens like avobenzone or oxybenzone, ethoxylated ingredients like SLES. There's worries about 1,4-dioxane contamination, ethanolamides, synthetic polymers because they have polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, synthetic fragrances you avoid, synthetic silicones ingredients, those aren't natural enough, and EDTA, like a chelating agent. So when you're formulating natural, you can't use these ingredients. Beyond specific ingredients, natural standards also have other factors to consider. Most of them are against technologies like nanoparticles, and they also require you to avoid animal-derived ingredients. In the EU, they also prohibit GMOs and any kind of animal testing. And finally, these standards also encourage suppliers to look for ingredients derived from fair trade practices that don't exploit the land of indigenous people. It's important to the natural consumer. Now, if you are going to formulate to a tier 3 level of formulated, the key thing to follow is to follow some standard of natural that your consumers believe. But I just want to reiterate that anyone can come up with their own natural standard. You just have to have one and have it, it's easier to follow one that's established, especially in the United States, especially, in the event that some lawyer wants to sue you for not being natural enough. Since tier 3 level formulating and higher is what many of you will be following, I want to mention what I see as the most difficult challenges facing natural formulators. The biggest challenge you're going to face includes preservation, coloring your products, effective cleansing actives, and emulsification. Now, we look at all of those in our practical cosmetic formulating course, but I'll cover two topics I was asked to prior to this webinar, specifically preservation and colorants. Now, here's a list of common cosmetic preservatives that, standard formulators are going to use. These have been proven to be the most effective preservatives for most any cosmetic formulation. Unfortunately, nearly all of them have to be avoided by the natural formulator. They just aren't natural enough, or they're not viewed as safe enough by customers. And so those are ones you can't use. Here's a list of, preservatives that are approved under the Cosmos standard. Just a moment here. So these include benzyl alcohol, sorbic acid and its salts, benzoic acid and its salts, salicylic acid, and dihydroacetic acid. There are others, but these are the main ones. Which one you use really depends on your formulation and conditions. So it's hard to give, specific ingredients here because it depends on your formula. It can be difficult to formulate with these preservatives because they tend to destabilize your emulsions, and mostly they're not effective at pH levels below 5.0. So you can't really, that restricts your formulation ability. I should note that none of these compounds are actually naturally produced. Now, the ones that you can buy and use in cosmetics, they're all synthetically produced in the lab. The rationale for allowing them, though, is that they do exist in nature. So even though the actual ingredients aren't from nature, the compounds themselves exist out there. Now, you might think that colorants would be relatively easy to find natural versions of. However, this is not the case. Colorants are the most highly regulated of all cosmetic ingredients in the US. So if you are adding an ingredient to your formula for the purpose of using its color, then you can only use approved FDA colorants. In the EU, there's approved EU colorants too. But from a natural standpoint, the only approved colorants include beta-carotene for your yellows, annatto for orange, caramel for brown, guazoline for blue, beetroot for red, chlorophyllin for green. You can get zinc oxide and titanium dioxide for whites, and then carmine for red. Just a note about carmine, it's an interesting case. It is an ingredient derived from the shells of beetles, and it is, quite common in lipsticks because it really gives a nice bright red color. Most natural colorants will give only dull, weak colors, but many would not consider carmine natural because they have to kill thousands of beetles for a small amount of the red colorant. So if you use this color, it would be difficult to consider your product cruelty-free. Beetles are dying. All right, the final tier of natural formulating is the tier 4, or greenwashing. Greenwashing is a formulation strategy in which you take a standard product, add some organic extracts or other natural sounding ingredients, make it smell like a plant, change the color, and make the packaging look like something natural. Putting the term natural or herbal in the title also will help sell products. The thing is, greenwashing continues to work, and a lot of big natural brands continue to be successful with greenwashing. And the main reason is because it's easy to do, it's affordable, and you don't have to make compromises with your product's performance. In fact, most cosmetics brands use some form of greenwashing in nearly all their products. And the reason is that consumers They might say they want natural and green, but the reality is when they're buying cosmetics, the first thing they want is a product that solves a problem that they have. So, which is the best strategy for natural formulating? Well, I can't really answer that question for you. That's really up to you and your company philosophy. Ultimately, if you want to have a successful cosmetic product line, you're going to have to find a group of consumers who want to buy your products. Now, if you can find enough people who like your story and your products, you could be successful with any of these formulation strategies. In some ways, greenwashing is the easiest because you can still get product performance as good as anything else on the market. However, there is some legal risk now with greenwashing because if somebody doesn't think that your products are natural enough, you could get sued. And the other levels do have some appeal. As we said, there are benefits to getting certified. And if you can find a consumer who wants completely natural, there may be less competition there, even if the products don't work as well as standard cosmetics. But remember, if no one is buying your product and they don't like the way that it works after they've tried it, you probably don't have a product worth making. Always remember, performance is really important. Now, if we look at the natural cosmetic market, as far as prevalence of formulas, the most common strategy used in the cosmetic industry by far is greenwashing. And while there's nothing wrong with greenwashing when done right, yeah, some consumers and groups, they find it unsettling and some even think it's unethical. This is the reason that the natural standards were created. A number of brands follow this strategy. They have varying levels of success. Now, if you want to sell products at Whole Foods or a chain like that, then you're going to have to follow. Then you can't follow the greenwashing. You have to go to a certified strategy. If you want to follow the MPA or the EWG then you have to certify them with your brand. Now, are products really more natural than greenwash products? I don't know. Natural really hasn't created any suitable natural surfactants. And as I said, there isn't a shampoo tree or on some level, there's always processing going on, right? However, a case could be made that these products are better for the environment and more sustainable than ones made from petroleum products. They're also less susceptible to the claims of greenwashing that might have negative impact on sales. Now, I see the organic certified as an extra level of naturalness. The USDA standards are quite strict and don't allow for many chemical reactions. So if you can get certified under these standards, you are a bit closer to nature. Now, I'm just going to finish this up with a look at how the different strategies that are used in the marketplace here. So in the natural formulation course, we get into more details of this, but in this presentation, we're going to look at hair conditioners, mostly because you can actually make a reasonable hair conditioner at pretty much any of these levels. So here is a range of hair conditioners made following the different tiers of natural formulating. And we go all the way from greenwashing here on the left to, I would say, all natural all the way on the right. Here's an example of what I call the greenwashing strategy. Their conditioning ingredients are the same as standard formulas, such as stearinethyl dimethylamine, disteryl diammonium chloride, and then they do avoid traditional preservatives. They go benzyl alcohol instead of parabens or formaldehyde donors. But otherwise, this is a pretty standard conditioner. Here's a tier 3 certification level. The formula attempts to be more natural, and they even carry a certification of gluten-free standard, although gluten isn't used in a lot of cosmetics anyway. But they do make mistakes in their ingredient list. They don't use proper INCI names, and they don't have it in the right order. But if you look at the formula, it does stay away from standard cationic surfactants and instead relies on oils to provide the conditioning effect. But there's still synthetic ingredients like glycerol stearate or cetyl alcohol, but they are allowed under some certifications. The next is the tier 2 green formulation. You can see this one has a USDA certification. So they don't use any synthetic ingredients, but they seem to rely on an in situ saponification reaction with coconut oil and olive oil to provide some emulsification that makes the product a little easier to rinse out. But this doesn't look like it would be a particularly effective conditioner. And then finally, we have an all-natural conditioner, which is just a big tub of coconut oil. Coconut oil can actually be beneficial to hair for some things, but this formula isn't going to do too well for things like detangling, at least compared to something like a standard conditioner. But again, if your consumer wants all natural, you don't get much more natural than this one. All right, just to summarize what we've covered in this talk, we learned about the natural cosmetic market and the opportunity it provides to cosmetic brands. We learned about the different groups who have standards and how those standards are set. We talked about the formulation strategies to create products to the level of naturalness that you want. And we also covered the different motivation of natural formulators versus standard formulators. Now, I'll shortly go over some of the questions that were sent in, but first, I want to tell you about how you can get more information on formulating natural cosmetics. In this webinar, we're able to cover a high level of formulating, but I put together an entire course on the subject. And just one moment here. All right, I just set up a little button that'll let you see more about the program. Now, in this course, you're going to learn to create effective natural formulas that you can sell. It is a completely online course that teaches you what you need to know in order to formulate naturally to whatever level you want. We define natural, explore functional natural ingredients, including natural preservatives, thickeners, emulsifiers, and surfactants. We give specific skin and hair care formulation, and there is a section on natural product marketing. If you're interested in furthering your ability to create natural cosmetic formulas, this is a course to consider. Just click on the button below the webinar to get started. Also, since you stayed this whole webinar, thank you very much. I've got a special offer for you here. First, for people who sign up today, I'm offering a free 15-minute phone conversation in which we can talk about your formulation goals, your formulation challenges, and pretty much anything else you want. Actually, these phone calls usually go on for more than 15 minutes, but committing to that. Now, we can schedule a time that works for both of us, no matter where you are in the planet. We're also offering a 100% money-back guarantee for the course. So if you start the course and decide that's not for you, you get a refund, no questions there. Also, as always, you will have lifetime access to this material, and of course, lifetime access to any additions that I make to the course too. So there's that. A lot of times you take a course and then it expires and then you don't get it anymore. But this course, once you join, you get it forever. Plus, on this webinar special offer, we're offering a 10% discount on the course. So just sign up for the course using the coupon code listed there to join and get the discount. This offer is only going to last for the next 24 hours. So if you want the discount, feel free to sign up now. All right, enough of that. Let's get to the Q&A session. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions prior to the webinar. We got a number of them, which I will cover now. And if you have any questions based on the presentation or anything else about natural formulating, just post your name, email, and questions in the box below, and I'll answer what I can in the time allotted. Now, since I was chatting so much or talking so much, let's see. All right, I'm back. Now, I'm going to take, you know what? Let's just go to the questions. I can take a break later. All right, check out the questions here. Just to give you a sense, we've got 104 active questions. So let's see how we do here. Dr. Pataki asked, what are natural emulsifiers and natural preservatives? I went through some of the natural preservatives. Natural emulsifiers, they're going to just depend on, first, what you consider natural, and second, what oil do you use? Some people would consider glycerol stearate. Olivate is another one that people use. So if you had more more details about your formula, I could give you a better answer, but that's there. All right. Next question from Nikki. Do anti-aging formulas really work since they do not penetrate the skin to the lower levels? The lotions are not considered a drug. Nikki, that's a great question. So it depends. The answer is it depends on what you mean really work. Uh, when they make claims like it boosts collagen, no, they don't do that. No, they don't have any long-term effect, but they do have the effect of moisturizing, and that can make wrinkles look smoother. They can make wrinkles look less obvious. And so they do change the appearance. They don't, anti-aging does not actually change the underlying problems that are making your skin look aged. It just covers up those products. And you're correct. If some of these anti-aging products worked the way they said, interacting with the dermal layer and having an effect on your biochemistry, those would be illegal drugs. So at least here in the United States, I would be very skeptical that anti-aging products do more than moisturize. All right, Janelli asked, I want to know how many products can be made with retinol as the primary ingredient. Probably only a serum, which would be a spot one. Retinol as the primary ingredient would be extremely expensive to make a product like that. That's why you would use a solvent. Typically, a solvent is the main ingredient. But using retinol as the primary ingredient, if you really just mean retinol as the ingredient that has the most in it, then you're talking about just serums, which would be spot serums, and you do spot treatments. But if you're talking about it being like the main active ingredient, then you could make any number of you could make mostly you're going to be effective on leave-on products. Retinol can have an exfoliating effect, so creams and lotions would work best. Less functional would be cleansers that incorporate that. So those are really your best bets there. All right, thanks for that question. All right, Carol has a question when it comes to natural products. I have a lot of concern when it comes to preservatives. They run the minute you mention them, and as a chemist, I always use them. But there are a lot of people using garlic extract as a preservative because it's natural. What can I offer them to use something that's more safe? Well, I mentioned some of the formulations or some of the preservative options for natural in the webinar, and you could use those things. Benzyl alcohol, very common. Things like garlic extract and herbs and things, they just don't work well enough to be reliable preservatives. And so, but some people have had some success with it, so it really depends on your system. All right, here's a question. This is from Natalia. Is the lamellar system emulsion stable during the time? I'm not really sure what the question is. Let me get my microphone back here. There we go. I'm not sure how to answer that question, so I don't know. Yes, you can use the lamellar system to create stable emulsions. Yes. Here's a question from Jamie. Would you mind taking a look at a formula and providing me advice and feedback? Jamie, if you send me the formula, I'd be happy to take a look at it and see what I thought. People in the course, when people are in the course, they take priority, but I'll answer any questions. So yeah, feel free to send it along. This is Elad, and Elad comes from Israel. Wow, welcome, Elad. My question is, what is considered to be natural cosmetics and what preservatives can be used? We covered that in the webinar, and I hope if you have any further questions about that, feel free to post it here. Paula asked about setting RPMs. I answered that question in the forum, but when you're making batches using a standard mixer, it's going to depend on the formula, of course, but anywhere from 300 to 900 RPMs is typical. Okay, let's see if we're still broadcasting. Yeah, looks like we're still broadcasting. So, um, Heba from Morocco asks about the trends in America. Natural is still a growing trend in America, so there is that. Here's Isabella. Hi, I was able to make a formula with tea, butters, and oils, and some beeswax, but without emulsifiers. The formula held up for 2 months with no separating. Can you explain how I was able to do that without an emulsifier? Well, on some level, beeswax can be an emulsifier if you've mixed the right level of hydrocarbons. But when you're talking about tea, butters, oils, you don't mention that there's much water there. Maybe if that's diluted tea, but if it's dry tea, then you haven't put any water there. So when there's no water, emulsification is not as crucial. Emulsification is the act of mixing oils and water. Tracy from Santa Barbara, hello, all the way from the West Coast there. Paula said for 50 PS cream, what's the advice for impeller mixer? Sorry, I already answered that on the forum. Penelope says, what should I do to become a cosmetic formulator? Well, we've talked about this previously, but the strategy of becoming a cosmetic formulator, first, get a university degree in chemistry or chemical engineering, then get involved with the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. And you can actually do that while you're in college. Learn about the companies, and then, look for jobs as formulator or in QA to get into the industry. That's pretty much how everybody gets into the industry. Now, a lot of people will start at the raw material companies and then come over to the finished good manufacturers, but it's a different strategies here. Lydia asked, do I need to complete the practical cosmetic formulating course before taking the natural cosmetic formulating course? I would encourage you, if you don't have a background in chemistry, as you suggest, I would encourage you to do the practical cosmetic formulating course. That gives you the whole overview of what it takes to become a cosmetic chemist and be a cosmetic chemist. And it'll make more sense. If you just take the natural course and you don't have a chemistry background, you might not get as much out of it. Now, we do have a significant discount if you take the practical course and then take the natural course. There's a big discount, and you can contact me about that. Here we go. Jamela asks, I was wondering if you think natural products are efficient or more than cosmetics that use chemicals, more precisely for hair products. No, I think natural products will actually be less efficient. And the reason is this: when you're a standard formulator, you can use all of the natural ingredients that you want. So you can. But you can also use synthetic ingredients. And so when you're trying to create the most efficient product that you can, as a standard formulator, you can use anything and you're focused on make it efficient. When you're a natural formulator, you can only use certain ingredients. And so you're going to get to a plateau where you can't be any more efficient. And so that's just the challenge of natural formulating. Yeah, we have a lot of international people. Dan asks, can I have a copy of this seminar? Yeah, just I'll send you a link to the slides. Jeanette asks, what works for really dry, curly, bleached hair? Can we make good products at home, or is it better to buy? That's a good question. I personally believe it's better to buy products. The stuff you make at home, while it can work, it's not going to work nearly as good as the products that people and laboratories have spent years coming up and optimizing and creating products that work the best. Products that you buy at the store just will work better than stuff at home. Now, if you want to try stuff at home and you get some joy out of creating something from home and doing it yourself, yeah, you can do that. It's just not going to solve your problems as well as a product that was specifically designed and tested to solve the problems that you're having. Lanita asked, will I be able to get the slides later? Yeah, I could send you a link to the slides if you like that. Marina asks, what is a natural alternative to retinol in terms of retinol's effect on the epidermis? There are some extracts that are said to have vitamin A in them, but really I don't know of anything that's going to be as effective as retinol itself. And in fact, isolating isolating retinol. Usually, retinol will come from natural sources, so it's isolated from a natural source. So when you're getting it from directly from an extract, it's just way diluted, so it's not going to be nearly as effective. Yelena asks, what are natural preservatives that can be used in foundations, lipstick, and mascara? Good question. Phenoxyethanol is considered natural by some standards, so that is certainly an option. Liza asks, or Crystalline asks, I was asked to make my natural formulas have longer stability. How do I do this, or is this possible? What is the normal expiry date? So, the normal expiration date for cosmetics, you should always strive for 1 year of stability. Now, some can last longer than that because consumers keep them, but we always test it for 1 year of stability. So that's the normal. Now, some natural products have the expiration date of like 6 months or something, but I wouldn't feel good as a company doing anything with less than a year. Now, how do you make your products have longer stability? That depends on what is the nature of the instability. If it's separating, you have to improve the emulsion system. If it's becoming contaminated by microbes, then you have to improve the preservative system. So, yes, it's possible, but I can't specifically answer in the case that you have there without more information. Here's Liza. She says, is it possible to create a nail polish without toxic slash only all natural ingredients? Any advice on how or where to get started with finding help to formulate? To tell you the truth, it's not. No, I would say it's not possible to create a nail polish that delivers the performance that people expect using only all natural ingredients. You need a film former. There really aren't any significant film formers that are going to work as well as nitrocellulose, for example. The natural colorants that you get, they just aren't as vibrant or bright. And so I think you've got to, when you're thinking about creating nail polishes, I think you've got to really consider what your definition of natural is. Now, you say toxic ingredients. The ingredients as used as nail polish, they aren't toxic. So maybe at higher levels, or you could show something in the laboratory, there's some concern. But it's illegal to sell cosmetics that would be toxic or harmful to people. And so the nail polishes out there, they aren't. All right, which formula is good as natural cosmetic formulas who are living in a hot area? This is from Shelley. I don't know exactly what type of formula you're talking about there, so I can't really answer that question. Next question here. This one comes from Crystal Lynn. Issues with natural and sulfate-free surfactants. How do you thicken and avoid stringy textures? Well, the natural ingredient used for thickening typically is xanthan gum. And the way to avoid stringy textures is you've got to optimize that level of xanthan gum. It is a challenge. It can be a little stringy. But if you're using surfactant-free, if you're using sulfate free. You can also, use something like a cocamidal propylbutane, which can have some thickening effect depending on the level of salt. So you could use that too. Seth says, "Nice hat and ukulele." Thanks, Seth. All right, we're just getting through a bunch of these questions. Now we have, does the EU have, Kathy says, does the EU have more stringent criteria for micro testing than the US? My formula passes the standard US micro with no issues and are being rejected in the EU after testing for a longer duration of time. If they're testing for a longer duration of time, then yeah, they probably do have more stringent standards in the EU, because the EU, they have like a specific test that you have to follow. The US, they have labs have standards that they follow, but there's no specific thing that the FDA says this is the standard that you have to follow. So now, would an airless pump help extend shelf life for a foundation formulation? Yeah, airless products can help to extend the shelf lives, but that really depends also on when you put together the formula, you had a lot less microbes in the atmosphere. So yes, that can happen. Fernando says, "Is using disodium EDTA compulsory?" No, it's not compulsory. It will help usually for improve your preservative system, but you don't have to use EDTA or any chelating agent. It's just a really good idea to do that. Maria says, "Any opinion on Verge Moist beet sugar extract as a moisturizing ingredient?" I haven't used it. I'm sure it's a fine moisturizing ingredient, but I don't really have an opinion on it. The concern I would have is that beet sugar extract, and really any extract, is made up of so many different chemicals. You never know what you're buying. And what I like about the nice part about synthetic ingredients is that when you buy an ingredient, you're getting that ingredient. When you buy beet sugar extract, the ingredient that you get depends on the growing season, and the composition will depend highly on the growing condition and the environment it exposed to. So while it might be moisturizing great one day, the next batch might not work the same. So that can be a bit of a challenge. That's one of the challenges working with natural formulas. Okay, Catherine asks, "I'm having trouble with my creams pilling a bit after the skin and is constantly massaged. It feels as though the cetyl alcohol and my oils are bunching a bit. And I have added propylene glycol and have titanium dioxide for luminosity at my base." Catherine, I'll answer that one offline, or you can put it in our forum. Yeah. Carol said it looks out of focus. Is that just me? Carol, depending on your internet connection, it could look a lot of focus. I'll try to hopefully I could put a more in focus version on the internet. Next we have one from Karina. "I'm from Angola. I started my brand no longer ago of a natural cosmetics, natural oils. I would like to formulate facial masks and clay masks. Can you help?" Well, for formulation questions, I'm going to encourage you to go into our forum. There are formulators there who can help for specific like that, or like for a project like that. Sophia says, "There are a lot of negatives used on chemical cosmetics, but I believe there are advantages to them, such as more effective preservation. What are your views on natural formulating versus chemical formulating?" I hope my views came off there. I think both have their spot. The natural formulation market is big and it's growing, and it's a place where people can break into the industry. On the other hand, if you're looking for performance and safety, chemical formulating is just that usually works better and it's usually safer. So. Okay. Now it's past noon, so if you want to stick around for more questions, I'll just keep answering questions until I get through a bunch of them. But thank you. I want to thank everybody who came to the webinar, who showed up, who participated in our forum, and who follow us on Chemist Corner. If you ever have any questions, feel free to send me an email at perry.romanowski@gmail.com. Sometimes you'll see the joggler at gmail.com. Or participate in our forum, or post, say hi to us on Twitter. On Twitter, we're Chemist Corner. So feel free to, if you're active on Twitter, feel free to connect there. Uh, or all over the internet. So thank you so much. I'm going to keep answering these questions, but I'll see you in the next webinar. Incidentally, if you have ideas for other webinars, last time we did cosmetic chemistry formulation. This time we did natural. I got another one planned for next month, but I'm always looking for new ideas that you want to learn about. So thanks. All right. Shuna Rudd says, what do you think of beetroot ferment, lucidal liquid, as a preservative for water-based formulas? I think it can work under some formulations, but for most people, it's not going to be effective enough. It's because it's very specific in the microbes that it kills, and it really depends on you having a clean manufacturing facility. So I'm not convinced that it's adequate so far. Tao asks, what solvent or method can be used to dissolve most material, especially botanic powdered ingredients? Uh, Glycerin is used, alcohol is used. So it really depends. It really depends on the ingredient. So, and in some cases, water can be used too. Carol says, if the product has more than 60% of alcohol, can they still call a product natural? Specifically in the repellent products. Well, I mean, you can call anything natural. I think we got that. And some people would say, the alcohol comes from natural fermentation, so that's all natural. Um, and like I said, natural, at least in the United States, is not a restricted claim. I would say also that repellents are not cosmetic products, so it's not really my area of expertise. But yeah, you could still call it natural in that case. Teresa asks, are you going to get a webinar link to rewatch? Yes, if you weren't able to see the whole webinar, or maybe you joined late, I'm going to send out a link for people to watch it again. Catherine asks, can you name some synthetics? I'm not specific what that refers to, but some synthetic. We talked about synthetic preservatives. Synthetic colors are FD and C colors. Red 1, red 33, yellow number 5, that sort of thing. Detergents like sodium lauryl sulfate, sodium lauryl sarcosinate, that sort of thing. Okay. Kathy says, I have a contract manufacturer using natural ingredients with over 70% certified organic. Can I get an organic certification anywhere if they are not an organic certified lab? No, you probably can't. I mean, you could probably get certified by the Natural Products Association, NPA, or the NSF. But as far as USDA organic, I doubt that you can get certified that. And only 70%. You're not able to use. You're able to call it, say, certified organic for ingredients, but you're not able to say that the product can use that seal and be called certified organic from the USDA. But other standards you could meet. Yelena asks, where do I get pharmaceutical grade ingredients to create makeup for the medical community? At the same places you get cosmetic grade, there is no pharmaceutical versus cosmetic grade of ingredients, at least when it comes to makeup. So go to standard. ulprospector.com is a great source for a lot of chemical suppliers. All right. Well, there's a bunch more questions. Just so you know, this is the question and answer session for the Natural Cosmetics webinar. We've already done the webinar, and so I'm just answering questions that people posted along the way. Here's one from Carol. How can you make a hand soap that works as well as the synthetic hand soap? I have tried a lot, all liquid based with the valve that produces foam, and they don't clean as well. Well, Carol, sometimes there are some things that you can't do naturally that you can do synthetically. That's just how it is. Soap, hand soap, made with something like um, uh, sodium cocoate or sodium olivate or potassium cocoate, one of those salts, or sodium stearate. Uh, those things just don't, they just don't feel as well as it's like a synthetic detergent. They don't rinse as well. They interact with the ions in your water, and so it's just really difficult to make one doing that. Having said that, you can make something that works pretty well. It just don't expect it to work as well as a synthetic. Uh, Angela asks, the marketing group that put together the list of natural brands, and how did they define natural in the context of cosmetics? Um, that's a good question. I believe the information comes from Mintel, but I'll have to get back to you on that specifically. All right. Here's a question from, or just a comment from Shirazad. Shirazad, I am a LOH Loha formulator and want to learn about chemist. I was um, Can you tone it down on your anti-LOHA attitude so that we can learn from each other? Well, I apologize if I came off negative like that. I didn't mean to come off negative for Loha. If you're a Loha formulator or formulating for the Loha group, uh, I I think it's great. Go right ahead. I hope you learned some information in this webinar today that would help you in that regard. I apologize for that, and uh, yeah, I don't know what more to say about that except yeah, sorry. Here's a question from N Booty. Can the Cosmos standards covering EcoSate, NatTrue certification, and cruelty-free standard be international regulatory requirement for natural products? So, will there ever be an international standard? I doubt that there will be an international standard for this, mostly because there's a bunch of groups who have their own standards, and they're incentivized to keep their standards and not over. If everybody got their harmonized standards, then you wouldn't need everybody. There's just would be one. And I only say that is because if you look at cosmetic regulations around the world, there isn't a standardized cosmetic regulation around the world. The idea of getting a standardized natural one around the world, I just that would be difficult, especially since there isn't a government regulation right now. So getting private companies to agree be pretty difficult, but it's possible. Carol says cruelty free is free from cruelty is everywhere now, but a lot of the ingredients that you use is tested first by your providers of raw materials. So is this just propaganda? I mean, it's up to you what you want to believe. Yeah, all of the cosmetic raw materials, are pretty much all, have been tested on animals. So anything you use as a cosmetic, it's been tested on animals sometime in the past. Now, what some of these groups say is that they say, okay, after this certain date, you can't use anything that's tested on animals after this certain date. So if it was before that, it doesn't count. But if it's after this date, you can't. And so that's how they say they're cruelty free. And so some people could look at it as propaganda. Other people could look at it as saying, you know, we're not getting any more animal testing. We stopped animal testing, and so eventually, nothing new will be tested on animals. So it depends on what you think. I kind of think it's on some level marketing propaganda, because the implication is that when you say you're free from cruelty, the implication is that everybody else is cruel. And I don't believe that is the case, because you're not any less cruel. I mean, nobody likes to do animal testing in cosmetic industry, and eventually, hopefully, it'll go away. But everybody who's in the cosmetic industry has benefited from animal testing that was done in the past, and it doesn't make you any less cruel than anyone else. Danielle asks about regarding the list of Cosmos approved preservatives. I've heard lactobacillus ferment, which is derived from root radish, and recently I've seen aspen bark on some formulation. Are those not considered naturally derived? Yeah, those are considered naturally derived. Those would be certainly preservative options. I don't think they work well enough to be the only preservatives. Of course, the suppliers of those ingredients might disagree with me, but as far as my experience goes, I would not feel confident just using those as the only preservatives. But the Cosmos standard is also updating all the time, and so they might add something, and it's possible that there are some new materials on the standard that I'm not aware of. So there you go. All right, I'm just looking through some more questions here. Annika says, how do you determine therapeutic or effective concentrations of natural botanical ingredients? Most of this stuff is done by trial and error, but it depends on what effect are you trying to have. It's very you would try different concentrations, uh, see what measure you would have for whatever effect you're trying to have, and that's kind of how you would figure this out. uh, you know the reality is, a lot of things, a lot of botanical or natural ingredients are claimed to have done stuff, and the the evidence for them actually working is not available, or it's not been proven. And so a lot of times this is just hit or miss. You're guessing at the effectiveness. The only way you can effectively know what concentration you should use of any ingredient is, first you have a benefit, a way to measure the benefit that you're getting, and then you test different concentrations to achieve that benefit. And whether you achieved it or not, well, then that's that's how you determine that level. There isn't some simple answer to every one of them, though. Dan asks, for natural formulation, what preservatives are strongest to keep product life cycle longer? That really depends on the preservative, the preservative method. There's a method called the hurdle technology. You want to use chelating agents. So you can't answer that as a single thing for every formula. So it really depends on the system. The ones that I mentioned can be used to help product life cycle. All right, we're getting through a ton of questions here. I'm about halfway down the list here. Um, Angel says, do you have a manual where you have every synthetic name with its organic name? Do you download the manual, have this in it? I'm not sure what the question is there, but I don't have a no, I don't have a big book that has every synthetic chemical in it and an organic replacement for that. I don't think such a thing has been put together. In our course, we cover a number of ingredients and a number of replacement ingredients, but so yeah. Veronica says, on the T1 to T4 pyramid site, you have an error pointing up saying product abundance on the market is the chart based on volume. Yeah, it should. Well, the idea of that triangle was that the higher you go up on the pyramid, the less abundant you have products on the market. So if that didn't come out clearly, I'm sorry, I'll have to relook at that slide. But thank you. Nikita says, I want to know what tests should be carried for checking quality of formulation using natural ingredients. That's going to the test that you run is going to depend on the specific formula that you have and the specific ingredient that you're talking about. But there are a number of QA tests you run, like pH. You run color checks. You run odor checks. You could run a mass spectrometry check. You can do percent iodine values, and there's just a number of things that you could test. So I can't give a single answer to that question there. Ian says, wouldn't shea butter and coconut oil be example of considered? Yes, those are natural. Tia says, can you post the URL for the SCC? Yeah, I'll send it to you directly, but it's scconline.org. Paula asked, can preservatives like benzyl alcohol, potassium sorbate, dehydroacetic acid influence the stability of emulsion? Yes, these things can interfere with the stability of emulsions, and they can separate. This is the big challenge of formulating emulsions naturally, because yeah, that can destabilize your emulsion. It's, it just takes some adjusting of the ingredients to to create a stable formula. Elad asks, have you encountered a preservative, gluconolactone? It is so-called natural preservative from Lonza called GeoGuard Ultra. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. It can be effective under some systems. It's not broadly effective enough, in my opinion, but you can use it, and it as long as you consider it natural, then it's certainly worth trying. But I don't think it's broad spectrum enough, and it'll be effective, but it might be under some things. Daniel has one more question. If we have not taken the original practical course, do you recommend we start there? Yeah, Daniel, if you're going to take the course, I would recommend taking the practical formulating course and then the naturals course, because the practical just gets much more detailed. So unless you have a formulation background, it's probably better to do it that way. Robin asks, do you have a personal level of naturally derived ingredients that you would work to in your formula before using them natural in the pack copy? Sorry, I got distracted here. Well, as far as I would go, yeah, I would only, as far as what I would consider natural, I would only consider things that are derived from plants as natural. Now, I would be okay with some natural synthetic processes, and actually following the Cosmos standards, I would feel good about the naturalness of those things. Now, the reality is, that is open to criticism, because these things, there's a lot of things that are synthetic chemicals, but I don't really personally have a problem in this realm. The one concern I have is about petroleum based ingredients, because they're not sustainable, they're not environmentally friendly, and plant ingredients are. And so my focus would be on encouraging people to use plant ingredients. And if you use plant ingredients and you synthesize some other ingredient, I'm perfectly fine with that. Okay. Nurali says wheat germ oil is comedogenic, and I'm using it in an acne cream, and it works well on my skin. But I read on the internet it's not good for skin because it blocks pores. I am using diluted wheat germ oil in jojoba tea tree oil and diluted sweet almond oil. Not sure I understand the question, but if you're using a system that is working for you, stick with it. Just because something is found to be comedogenic in a lab test, it doesn't mean necessarily your skin will have that same effect. In fact, many people won't. On the other hand, it doesn't mean you should create a product and sell it to people, because there will be people who have that problem. So if it works for you and you're just making it for you, that's fine. But I wouldn't sell a product like that. All right, we're coming up on 12:30. I'm going to answer a couple of more questions, and if I didn't get to your question, I will answer it offline. But I really do appreciate you coming on, and I do hope I didn't come off as too negative or cynical about this topic. I am a I am a chemist, and I don't buy into what I call the natural fallacy, or actually, people call it the natural fallacy. Um, Natural products are good. You can make great products with them, but there's nothing inherently better about a natural product than a standard cosmetic product. That's my view. Having said that, you have to make products for your consumer, and you make the products that your consumer wants. And if your consumer wants to avoid certain ingredients, then you should make products that avoid that ingredients, and that's where natural formulating comes in. All right, I'm going to answer one more question, and then everyone else, if I didn't get to your question, I'll answer it offline, um, via email if you've left that email. All right, let's see a question here. Uh, okay, here's one from Veronica. Veronica says, "Why do we aspire to form emulsions versus lotion if lipids in oils do not penetrate transdermal to provide transport and benefit? Some Japanese products do not bother with emulsions and deliver moisturizers via lotions. The reason you make emulsions is so you can better deliver the oil materials. Because if you use directly the oily material, um, it's sticky, it spreads, it doesn't go into the skin well, it just doesn't feel as good. And so, if the product doesn't feel as good, you don't want to keep it on, and it doesn't work as good. When you make an emulsion, that helps to dilute out, it helps spread better, it helps the ingredient work better. And that's really the reason that you use emulsions. All right. Thanks again for everybody who joined and asked a question. If you had any problems, feel free to email me. perry.romanowski@gmail.com. I apologize for anybody who might have taken any of what I said as sounding excessively negative. I come from the vantage point of a chemist, a cosmetic chemist. Science is in my brain. Um, I don't disparage anybody, as far as making products that are natural, but I just can only communicate what I know, and what science informs is that we live better. There's better living through chemistry, whether that chemistry is natural or synthetically produced in the lab. I love it all. So I hope you found this webinar helpful. Feel free to email me if you have ideas for other webinars, and I will see you next month. Thanks.